So over to you, Mel. Help us and bring us back to Jerusalem and tell us what else you found about Jerusalem and what else you found about biblical theology, and also what else you found about the Bible itself concerning what now Islam has borrowed. And that's what we're saying. Islam has borrowed almost all of these ideas.
Okay, so obviously we're talking about the Jerusalem thesis, and a big part of that thesis is the Masjid Al-Haram and where exactly that is. So according to the Jerusalem thesis, the Masjid Al-Haram is to be found on the Temple Mount. And there are lots of good arguments for why that is the case. And these are based on references that we can find in the Bible and how it corresponds to what it says in the Quran. And we can also look at various geographical evidence as well. Now, if we look at reason one, a very important reason why we can say that it is the masjid on the Temple Mount, it's to do with the link with Abraham. So in Genesis, it refers to Abraham building an altar on Mount Moriah to sacrifice Isaac upon. It says, "Then God said, take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the land of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." What's really significant is that when we say that word Moriah in Arabic, what do we say? It is Marwa.
Marwa is Moriah.
And so that's a huge link. Now, this
So
would be something I will...
What you're saying, Mel, is the pronunciation of Moriah would be Marwa. So it's just the same pronunciation, it's the same word, but pronounced as an Arab pronunciation Arab would do it.
Yeah. So this is a very significant story. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so when they reached the place God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Now, if we look at another reason why it's significant, it's the place where Solomon built the first temple. So, as you can see from 2 Chronicles 3:1, then Solomon began to build the temple of the Lord in Jerusalem on Mount Moriah, where the Lord had appeared to his father David. It was on the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite, the place provided by David. Now, reason number 2 is the idea of the Kaaba itself. The Kaaba is a cube. Well, at least it's meant to be. The word means cube, but I'm sure, Jay, you're aware that the Kaaba that's in Mecca isn't actually technically a cube. It only looks a little bit like a cube, but it's actually a cuboid, perhaps you'd call it.
I'm just going to put the picture up right here. Take a look at the picture. You can see it is really a rectangle. It is not exactly a cube. So why is it being called the cube? Because that's what Kaaba means in Arabic.
But let's have a look at what the original Kaaba was, the original cube. So if we turn to Exodus 26, it talks about the tabernacle in the wilderness. That is like the original temple, and it was essentially a large tent that the Jews would put up, and the Ark of the Covenant was kept in the end of it in a place called the Holy of Holies. It was a cubic room, as we'll see in a moment, and God's presence was believed to be in there. So if you look at the picture on the right, you can see very clearly that cube shape, and only the high priest could go in there. Okay, so if we take a look at further references, we can see in 2 Chronicles 3:3 we have the dimensions. The portico at the front of the temple was 20 cubits long across the width of the building and 20 cubits high. Now obviously that's two-dimensional, but it suggests a cube, and this is confirmed by another reference elsewhere. He prepared the inner sanctuary within the temple to set the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord there. The inner sanctuary was 20 cubits long, 20 wide, and 20 high. He overlaid the inside with gold, pure gold, and he also overlaid the altar of cedar. So this is really a slam dunk. The cube, the Kaaba was originally associated with the Jewish tabernacle. Reason 3 is to do with the Hajj, which means pilgrimage. 3 times a year, all your men must appear before the Lord your God at the place he will choose, at the festival of unleavened bread, the festival of weeks, and the festival of tabernacles. This is from Deuteronomy 16. No one should appear before the Lord empty-handed. Each of you must bring a gift in proportion to the way the Lord your God has blessed you. Now, in the original Hebrew, the name for that is Hag. So Hag HaKatzir, the festival of unleavened bread, Hag HaShavut or Shavot, and Hag HaSukkot. But when we say that in Arabic, that word Hag becomes Hajj. And actually, you got a phone call, you were telling me, from Murad on this very word.
Just a number of, actually, I just about a half an hour ago, you won't believe this. I mean, this is how God works. It's just providential. Murad called me up on using WhatsApp, and he wanted to talk to me about some of the things he's discovering. And he just said that he saw the video that we put up with Paul yesterday, and he said, you know, Jay, that idea of Hajj and hug, you are absolutely correct. It all depends on where you put the dot. If you put the dot above the letter or you put the dot below the letter, it becomes either a G or a J sound. And he says, in places, even today, places like Yemen and in Egypt, the Hajj is still hug. They're still using the G. Everywhere else, they use the J sound, but they still use the G in those 2 countries in Arabic.
And the other thing, which is also interesting, is a person who makes the pilgrimage specifically to Jerusalem is called a Hagag, which obviously would be a Hajjaj if we say it in the Arabic way. And we all know who Al-Hajjaj is, the person who was Abdul al-Malik's right-hand man. So that is very significant. So what's interesting here, we have the word Hajj. It comes from Hebrew and it was connected with the Temple Mount. And I think these are very good reasons to suppose that this is where the original Masjid Al-Haram is. And this is a good part of the argument, I would say. Now, another aspect of this, if we look at the Feast of the Weeks, from the Mishnah, it prescribes circling the temple 7 times on the 7th day. So we see a Hajj, we see the circling. So it's a great match. We're on to reason 4 now. The idea of the house of God. So I'm sure the Christian viewers will be familiar with this. Pretty much in lots of parts of the Bible, it refers to the temple as the house of God. So if we move on to reason 5, Baka, we find in the Quran the first house created for mankind at Baka, 396. So this is something that Paul mentioned in passing, that it comes from Psalm 84. If you look at the references in bold, they all relate to the Temple Mount. So you have the courts of the temple, you have the altar, you have the reference to the house, and the Valley of Baca is really a symbol of the pilgrimage to Jerusalem. So that's the link there with Jerusalem once again. I don't know if you want to say something on that, Jay.
Oh, and Paul did bring this up, and this is something we need to underline. I noticed that one or two people in the comments also brought this up. Baka was always a place that you stopped on the way to Jerusalem. It was a rest stop. It was a place to get your energy up before you actually went to Jerusalem, with all that what that entailed. And so Baka is well known in the Bible, and it is not Mecca at all.
Reason 6 is to do with shaving heads. So obviously when Muslims go on Hajj, they shave their heads. So an objection might be to a Jewish location is that Jews are not known for shaving their heads as Muslims do on Hajj. You can see a reference to heads shaved in Surah 48:27. So how does that link with the Bible? Well, we find it here. Isaiah 22:12. In that day the Lord God of hosts called to weeping and mourning, to baldness and putting on sackcloth. We can see that the early Muslims obviously read the Bible and they decided that that's going to be part of their ritual. Perhaps the rabbinical Jews may have disagreed with them. Maybe they had different customs. But you can see in the picture down there, that the Muslims dress entirely in white. And Jay, do you want to talk about that aspect of it?
It is just a bland piece of white cloth, all as one piece that they wear on themselves, so that everyone is equal, that there are nobody there. This is to show a sign of humility before God, that no one is rich, no one is poor, no one is white, black, or any other color. You are all white, one color, one piece of cloth, and therefore there's no distinction between one and the other. That's the meaning that they give today. Now, that comes straight out of Judaism again. The sackcloth that you see in Isaiah 22. The sackcloth is usually exactly the same way. It's to show obedience, and it's to show humility before God, so that nobody is any different before God. So even the rich and the poor wear the same sackcloth, and it's very rough. It's not supposed to feel good. You're not, and there's no refinery about it. There's nothing that can show you off, because you are nothing before God. Ironically, the Muslims have taken the same idea that was used there in Jerusalem, and now they've applied it to Mecca, possibly to Petra in between. So that idea that this was something new by Islam, no, Islam has just borrowed what is already there, again, proving that the old Jerusalem thesis that you and Paul and Otto Lafontaine are coming up with is absolutely crucial.
So something that you will have seen if you looked at the video on the Temple Mount. We did a video, I think it was about a year ago, on the Dome of the Rock. But you will notice that it's built for circumambulation, walking around it. So that's a key there. But is there a connection between that and Judaism? Obviously, we've seen some references to the idea that Jews circled on the seventh day 7 times. But what about the direction? Is it clockwise or anti-clockwise? Does that correspond? Okay. So in Judaism, the word for circumambulation is hakafa, which means to circle or go around, and it's a Jewish word, a Hebrew word, I should say. So this is the rock that we have referred to with the various markings. As you can see there on Sukkot, the reader's platform is circled on each of the 7 days of the holiday. This spot on the Temple Mount is the exact location of the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant was once kept. And not incidentally, they walk around it anti-clockwise, which is exactly what Muslims do as well. So in Judaism, starting things from the right side is considered to be important, since the right side is the side of chesed, which is kindness, while the left side is the side of gevura, which is judgment. So it's kind of like mercy versus judgment. So that's why Jews go around anti-clockwise.
That has been recreated by Islam as the Hajj, which even includes the 7 circumambulations. I'm sorry, going this way. It actually goes anti-clockwise, as we now found. It goes the other direction because it's going towards that which is kind, that which is going towards the kindness rather than the judgment. Interestingly, the Muslims have done the same thing. But ask a Muslim, why 7? How many times have I asked Muslims, why are you going 7 times around? And I've never bothered to ask them, why are they going anti-clockwise? I'm going to do it from here on out. Thanks so much, Mel. Because the Jews did this. Because this is what was done in Jerusalem.
You can see, once again, the copycats have copied the Jews here. And that reinforces the idea that this is where they've taken their ideas from in Jerusalem, from the Temple Mount.
It seems like it's underlying almost everything we've been saying. Islam is nothing, there's nothing original in Islam. We have noticed this, we have known this. We have said this about the Quran itself, that one of the things that we have been saying for years is that so much of the Quran is borrowings from Jewish apocryphal writings written in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, up until the 6th century, and also Christian Syriac Aramaic writings, many of them lectionaries, discussions that were meant to be discussions, never meant to be a literary piece. Had them been borrowed and put into a book. In almost everything we're finding, Islam has done nothing new.